guys! Today's Thursday, so I always do a live video on Thursday, and today's going to be a fun one because, boy do I have the story for you. Now, today, some of you know that I'm celebrating my 16th anniversary to my husband Manuel. It's been an awesome, amazing 16 years, and a lot of times people will ask us, how did you guys meet in the first place? And the story is actually out of this world. So now this is a story that I'll find myself telling at appointments if I'm getting my hair done or something done. People will ask me, so how did you meet your husband? You guys are so different. He's from Germany, you're from Utah. How did you meet? And the story seriously could make a movie. There's so much to it, and a lot of people have no idea the story behind how we met. So I'm going to share that with you today. It's funny because I remembered that I actually wrote a personal history about it. Here it is. I found this today down in my basement. This is actually the first book that I wrote. And I remember when I made this, because people would tell me all the time at work and at school, they'd hear the story of how we met and they'd say, wow, that could be a book or a movie. And so I didn't want to forget all the crazy details, and so I put it into a personal history that I actually at the time hoped would turn into a book of some kind, and I didn't do anything with it, but here it is, and I read through it today, and it's hilarious. There's a lot of details in here that I completely forgot about. So anyways, having said that, let's go ahead and I'm going to share with you the story of how we met. So for those of you who don't know, my husband, he's from Hof, Germany. It's a place in Bavaria, so if you've been to Germany or Europe, it's southern Germany. It's beautiful. It's where all the castles are. It's where all the yummy food is, and so it's an amazing place to visit. Now, for several years, back in the, I think, 80s to 90s, his grandfather had partnered with the mayor of Ogden, Utah, and they had this partnership where every couple years they would take a group of kids from Utah over to Germany and they would play soccer. I think sometimes they even had other groups that weren't playing soccer, but they would take a group over there and they would stay for 2 weeks and live with German host families and then tour Southern Europe. And then the next time they would bring the German kids over here to Utah and they would do soccer and tour, go out to Utah, California, and go on a tour and have fun with their host families. So they had this partnership going on for a long time. In fact, the city of Ogden, Utah has a sister city partnership with Hof, Germany that dates back to the early 60s. I don't know the date exact off the top of my head, but it's like early 60s or so. So they've had this partnership for years. So it was my husband's grandfather who headed this host family exchange program that was a lot of fun. So my husband had actually been to Utah quite a few times, usually in the summer, and he'd made a lot of friends here. And I guess one particular time he was visiting, he was encouraged to try out for the Weber State men's soccer team. So he was a semi-professional soccer player where he's from. So he was a star in his town. He was getting paid to play soccer. He was always in the newspapers and everybody knew him. I mean, he would sign autographs. So he was quite the little star where he was from. So he came over here, and so people will ask me, well, why in the world would he come to Ogden, Utah, to Weber State University and give up all of that to play soccer over here? And there's just a funny story behind it. So he tried out. He was actually dating a girl at the time, kind of long distance. She was from here, and he'd come to visit her, and he was encouraged to try out. He made the team, and he received a scholarship for soccer. So he decided he would come for 1 semester. Now this was fall of 1999. So go back with me in time. So fall of 1999, I had that summer moved up to Ogden from Sandy, Utah, and I was living with my sister in this little house with roommates. I didn't know anyone yet. I just graduated from high school. I wanted to have a fun, exciting college life. I wanted to get into school, get into programs, meet lots of people. I was not planning on getting married anytime soon or meeting a husband, you know what I mean? I was so young. I mean, I was 18 years old. And I remember I got a job I had a series of college jobs that would last a couple months, and then the hours would decrease. I'd get a different one. So at the time I met him, I was working at this little shop in Roy, Utah. If you're from there, you probably know it's still there. And it's called Copies Plus. And it was a little print shop where people could come in and make copies. And it's still there. We visited it a few months ago. And so I was working behind the counter. It was just me in this tiny little store. And I remember I would sit there. It was a really mundane job. And these beautiful ladies would come in some days, and I would just stare at their sparkly wedding rings and think, oh, what must it be like to be married? They must have, you know, such a fun life. And I would look at the things they were making copies of, and I'd get ideas, and I'd get all excited. And I used to think, gosh, you know, there's never any cute guys that come in here. It's usually just moms and people making copies for their church lessons. You know, that's about all that would come in. And one day I was staring out the window, daydreaming, who knows about what, and all of a sudden this cute guy comes in through the door, and he has this 8-year-old boy with him, and he has a little bit of facial hair, and he was wearing soccer clothes, had a soccer uniform on, and I remember thinking, oh, here comes a dad with his son, how cute. And of course, he wasn't married, didn't have children. It was just, he was staying with a host family at the time, and this was their son. And he was with him, and I just remember he asked me some questions, and he was kind of a little bit flirty. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, he's probably married, and he's flirting with me. Shame on him. And so I remember thinking he was in his late 20s or something, and I was 18, so there was no chance, right? And I remember he left, and as he was walking out the door, he handed me a soccer schedule, because he made printed schedules of the men's soccer schedule for that season. And he said, oh, I play on the men's soccer team at Weber State. You should come check it out sometime. Now I remember thinking, yippee! Not because of him, but because I thought he was married. But thinking, oh my goodness, how fun. Maybe I'll meet some cute college soccer players. How fun. I'll tell my sister, we'll bring our roommates, this will be fun. And so I took it, I was excited, I went home, shared it with my sister. Now a couple days later, he came back in the store, and I thought, wow, he's persistent, and what is his wife going to think about this? And I remember we got talking, and then I found out, oh, he's not married, okay. And we got talking, and as he left the store, this time he asked me specifically on a date, and he said, what are you doing Wednesday night at 7? And I had a blind date for Wednesday night at 7, and so I said, oh, darn it, I have plans that night with someone. And he says, oh, well, that's too bad. And then he handed me his phone number and said, if you change your mind, call me that night. And I thought, okay, well, why didn't he just ask me out for another night? So he left the store, and according to him, in his mind, he thought I was turning him down. So he took it as, she's just not interested, so if she changes her mind, I gave her my number. Well, lo and behold, God has his hands in all things. He has his hand in my life, for sure. And that night, my blind date canceled just minutes before. And it was a double date, so I still, you know, wanted to go. And I remembered, oh, well, I've got that cute boy's phone number, so I'll call him. Now, at this time, I still didn't know he was German. I had concocted the story in my head that he was from Brazil because he had darker skin, he had an accent, his name was Manuel. What kind of a German has the name Manuel, right? And he played soccer. So I just thought for some reason he was from Brazil. I don't know why. And I even wrote about it in my journal. Cute guy from Brazil. Anyway, so I called him up, and he was excited. He said, yeah, let's go on this date. So we went and picked him up. We went on this date. I remember we went and saw that movie, The Sixth Sense. Have you seen that? Do you remember? And then we went out to the Olive Garden for dinner, and it was my sister and her date that were with us. So there were 4 of us. And anyways, long story short, he kissed me on our first date. I was shocked. I wasn't expecting it, and it was in the middle of the movie. And I guess that's how European guys are, according to him. But anyways, I was blushing quite a bit, was not expecting that. And anyways, interesting story. We start dating, and one day he's talking to me. So just so you know a little bit about him at the time, he was Lutheran, he was a vegetarian, and a Democrat, and so many other things about him so opposite of me. I was not a vegetarian. I'm a Mormon and very conservative, and I had always wanted to get married in the temple. I mean, that was my goal from since I was a child. And one night we were talking, we were on a date, and he said to me, "So what kind of a guy do you see yourself marrying?" And I just said, "Oh, you know, I'm just a nice guy that can take me to the temple. I want to get married in the temple." And I remember all of a sudden he got really quiet and he didn't say anything the rest of the night, and then he asked me to take him home, and then I didn't hear from him again for weeks. And I thought, oh, well, he's probably thinking, you know, I don't have a chance with her, or we're too different, and he was just disappointed, and, you know, maybe he was giving up. So I, you know, just went on with life and was going to school, and during this time, he ended up moving across the street from me, and I had no idea. So he had lived a couple cities over. He would commute, and then he ended up moving into an apartment right across the street. So one day he calls me, and I find out he's living across the street, and he says, "I have a surprise for you. Can you come over to my apartment? You're going to love this. I'm so excited." And I thought, oh, I haven't heard from him in a long time, so I love surprises. I'll go over. So I went over and I knocked on his door. I walk in, and there's two missionaries standing there with him. And we sat down, and he told me, "I know you haven't heard from me in a long time, but during this time I found some missionaries on campus, and I've been meeting with them every day, and they've been teaching me." And then they made this surprise announcement that he had decided to get baptized. And so I thought, wow, he's making all kinds of changes, and he's not quite the same person he was when I met him. And it was just a surprise, and I mean a pleasant surprise. And so we continued dating, and he just seemed to get brighter and brighter. He was happier and happier, and every day he would change a little bit more, a little bit more. And I remember it was November, so he was baptized in November, and then a week later he was going to go home for the holidays. He was going to take a plane back to Germany. Now originally he was supposed to be done. Remember, he was only coming for one semester to play soccer. He had a scholarship just for that one semester. So during this time he was working with the campus to try to figure out how to extend his visa so he could stay going to school. He was already enrolled in classes now for the next semester. So he thought, well, I'll just go home for Christmas since I have the plane ticket, tell my family I'm engaged, right? And then I'll be back in time for New Year's, and then we'll tell her family we're engaged, so it'll be fun. So he goes home on this plane. Oh, sorry, let me back up. The night before he's supposed to get on this plane, he takes me to Temple Square in Salt Lake City, and we go on this date, and he planned it. And I remember we're walking around Temple Square, and he stops at all these spots, and he gets real quiet. And then nothing happens, and then we move along, and he seems to be acting really nervous. And I wondered, oh my goodness, is he going to propose to me? We haven't really talked about marriage, and oh my goodness, is this how it happens in the movies? They just catch you off guard. I don't know if I'm ready for this. And I kept thinking he's up to something. Well, finally the night ends, and we get in the car, and it was my car, so we were driving back up to Ogden, and then all of a sudden I was disappointed. I was a little bit mad. I'm thinking, he was going to propose to me, and he chickened out. I was so bummed and so disappointed. So we were quiet all the way home, and apparently he was mad at himself because, yes, he had chickened out, and he was planning on popping the question. So we get all the way almost to where I was going to drop him off, and he gets out of the car and says, "Switch me. I want to drive." And I thought, weird. All right. So he gets in the driver's seat. We go to Smith's. He wants to get some carrots for some reason. He's stalling. It was weird. And then all of a sudden he drives me up to the canyon, and he parks over this spot where there's a view of the whole valley, and all of a sudden he just gets really quiet, and I thought, okay, all right, something's going on. This is weird. And he gets really quiet, and all of a sudden he just looks at me, and I don't remember word for word what he said, but he basically asked me if I would marry him and spend the rest of my life with him. And I didn't even hesitate. I jumped over the seat and I said yes, and I was so excited. And then he told me, "I'd been planning on doing this, but I wanted to wait because your ring wasn't ready." He said, "I ordered you a ring," and I had no idea. It was completely a surprise to me. And he said, "I ordered you this ring, and it's not going to be ready for a few more weeks, so I was going to wait till I got back from Germany." But he said, "I had this really strong feeling today that today was the day I was supposed to propose to you, and I couldn't ignore this feeling and I couldn't fight it. And when I tried to get out of it, the feeling would come back even stronger, so I had to do it tonight. And so I thought, okay, well, that's awesome. And I was so excited. And I remember we went back to my place later, and the first thing I said to him when it sunk in was, "What are we going to name our dog?" We were laughing so hard, but I was just on cloud nine. Now, he goes home, he goes to Germany, and the day before New Year's Eve, I go to pick him up at the airport with my sister. And we're waiting, and the flight comes in, and all the people start coming off the plane. Now, this was before 9/11, so things were different. You could walk right up to the gate, right? So all these people are coming off, and less and less people, and then finally they closed the gate, and he wasn't there. And this was before cell phones, pretty much. I mean, this was ancient. And so I couldn't call him. I had no idea where he was. He couldn't call me. And I was so disappointed. And just to make sure, I waited for another flight to come in from Chicago, I think it was. And he wasn't on that flight either. And I was so disappointed. We just went home. And I cried all night. And I thought, oh my goodness, maybe he got cold feet. And that's really awful. You know, it was sinking in. And anyways, hours later, he... Hey, Betty, it is romantic, right? It's like a love story of all time. So, anyways, that night, hours later, because they're 8 hours ahead of us, he calls me and he's really upset, and he was in Germany. And he said, "You're not going to believe what happened." He said, "I made it all the way to Chicago. And when I was coming through, what is it called? Customs, they looked at my visa, and because it was expired, you know, they took me in a police car, took me to another place in the airport, questioned me, basically lectured me, told me I committed a felony and that I would probably never be allowed back in the United States ever again, put me on the next flight back to Germany that night. And so he was just shaken up and didn't know what to do, and I was a little confused. And so anyways, I remember thinking, you know, so he didn't come back for that semester, and I remember thinking, wow, either we're not supposed to get married and this is a sign, or we are supposed to get married and that's why he proposed to me the night before he left, because if he hadn't have done that, I don't think I would have waited for him, and I don't think I would have tried to make it work. I would have just moved on. So 3 weeks later, I went and picked up my ring and gave it to myself, and he told me where to go get it. It was beautiful. Here it is, by the way. And originally it was gold, and I guess he had ordered it in platinum, so I had to switch it. So he picked that out right there. That's all him, guys. So I remember he bought me a ticket to come see him and his family. I'd never met his family, for spring break. So that March, it was awesome. I got to go over and meet his family and see where he was from. And then again, it was really sad to leave because I didn't know what was going to happen. We still didn't know if he'd ever be able to come back into the United States. And at the time, I was studying to go to school for business. And I remember walking through the business department, and I saw this flyer on the wall. Now, this is weird. Here's where the story gets really interesting. And it said, "Study Abroad Program with Weber State," and then this a university from his hometown in Germany. And it was only for students in the business program, which I was in. And it was a study abroad program where you could take your Weber State classes, but take them over there at the university and then take classes there as well that would all count towards Weber State. And it was for that semester. And I thought, whoa, that's very weird. And it was in his hometown. What are the odds, right? So I talked to a counselor. I enrolled myself in this program. Oh, someone's trying to interrupt my story. And I enrolled myself in this program. And I decided I would come to school over there until we could figure this out. So that summer, I was enrolled for fall semester. So that summer I came over, and he said that over there they had told him it would be a lot easier to work this out and possibly grant him another visa if they could meet the fiance. So now, I don't know if you've ever seen that show, 90 Day Fiance. I watch it all the time. because I can relate, because I've been there and I've done that. I know what it's like. It's crazy. It's a crazy process. And they said it would be more believable, it'd be more likely that he would get a visa if they could meet me to see that I was a real person, to interview us and see what our story really was. And so I went over there, and it took forever for us to get an appointment. And weeks went by, and finally we got the call that they were going to see us. And it was in Frankfurt, so it was, I want to say, a 6-hour drive from where he's from. We had to get up at like 2 in the morning and drive in the dark and get there right when they opened. And our appointment wasn't for a specific time, it was just for that day. So they said to us, we may or may not meet with you, but if we do, it'll be on this day, so you need to be there and come check in. And if we decide to come out and meet with you between our entire business hours that day, then we'll come get you. So we go there, we stay in this building all day long from when they opened at 7 in the morning or whatnot till 6 at night. And they never came out and met with us. So finally they're getting ready to lock up this building, and Manuel's mom, she taps on the window, and this guy peeks through the blinds and he says, "What do you want?" And she said, "We would like to meet with someone. We drove quite the distance to get here. This is very important, and nobody has come out to meet with us. We would like to speak with someone before we leave." And so he gives us each a form to fill out, and I remember there were questions on there like, why are you wanting to get married? What's your story? How'd you meet? Right? All of that. And I remember I wanted to make it very clear. So I took a pen and I drew a cartoon strip of our life. And it was like a comic, and we were little stick figures, and I drew him flying over on the plane, how we met, how he proposed to me, how we were supposed to get married, how many children we were going to have, how happy we were going to be, and they were going to have children, and we were going to have great-grandchildren, and how this beautiful story was supposed to happen. And I wrote that by not giving him that visa, they were going to ruin the story and make it so all these beautiful children could never be born. And, you know, I mean, talk about manipulative, right? So I was hoping my story would work and, you know, maybe tug at their heartstrings a little bit. And we turned in the papers. We waited about 20 minutes, and finally they crack open the door, and the guy says, "We looked over the papers and our answer is no." And Manuel's mom said, "What do you mean no? That, you know, he'll never get a visa?" And they said, "No, he committed a crime. He shouldn't have gone over on an expired visa. We just don't want to give him a visa. It's forbidden. So no, never." So they shut the door, and that was that. And I remember that was the longest drive back to their house. It was just the longest ride of my life. And I was devastated, and I thought, I can't do this. I can't. And I remember all these things going through my mind. I was 18 years old. I didn't want to live in another country. I wanted to be by my family, and I wanted to finish school at Weber State, and I had so many things I wanted to do, and just felt like we were going to be stuck, and it was just an awful feeling. And I remember I cried all the way home, and his mom felt really bad, and I just was feeling kind of hopeless. And then I remember I prayed a very specific prayer that night, and I was very specific with the Lord, and I said, "Lord, if we are meant to be, I need a sign right now. I mean, I need a sign as soon as possible, because I don't think I can do this. And if we're not meant to be, let me know either way. Otherwise, I think I'm going to go back home to Utah." I'm not even kidding. The very next day, we get a knock on the door, and it's the mail lady, and she has a parcel for him to sign, and he opens it up, and it's a visa. And no explanation for it. We cannot figure it out to this day, how it got there that fast, how it happened like that. Well, school was starting the very next day, and so we decided to get a flight as soon as possible. We were on a flight the next day back to Utah. Now, they told us the conditions that came with this visa were we had 90 days to get married. If we were not married by December 1st, 2000, he would never be allowed in the country ever again. And now we wanted to get married in the temple, remember? And you have to be, if you don't know this, you have to be a member, after you've been baptized, you have to be a member for 1 whole year before you can make those ordinances in the temple. And he would have been a member a full year November 30th. So we had no choice but to get married December 1st. Now I remember we wanted to get married in the Salt Lake Temple, so I called to make that reservation, and they were very busy. They had one opening left because it was finals week. Everyone gets married apparently during finals week in December. So they had one opening left and we got it. And I just felt like, hey, this is meant to be because all the odds have been against us and here we are together. This is happening. And beautiful story, his family came over. They were able to come to the wedding and to the reception and be here with us. And it was just beautiful, absolutely amazing. We got married on December 1st. And some things I want to tell you now before I conclude my little ending. I have something fun I want to share with you, but some things I left out of the story that you should know. As we figured this out after we were married, we looked back in hindsight and realized that a year before we met, we were in the same room at the same New Year's Eve party, and we never met that night. We both went to a dance out at Saltaire, and I had met a guy that night that had become my boyfriend my senior year in high school, and he was with a girl that he ended up dating long distance, and she was the reason he came back. So now I remember this boyfriend that I was dating, he went on a mission and he gave me a promise ring, and I had been wearing it all summer while I was at Weber State. And the day that I met my husband, the day that I met Manuel, that morning, for some reason I had this really strong feeling to take off that ring. And so I did. I took it off, and Manuel told me when I first walked into your store, the very first thing I looked at was your finger. Because if you would have had a ring on your finger, I never would have come back in that store. And so I was glad that I listened to the Spirit, and I mean, we were meant to be. And another little funny story we realized after we had met was that the girl that he was dating at the time was at my previous job. So just weeks before we met, I was working at Chili's as a hostess in Riverdale, and she was a bus girl. And she had trained me on my first day, and I guess he would come pick her up. So he was there at that restaurant picking her up from work every day, and I never saw him. So anyways, you know, there's so much more to the story that I've left out, and a lot of it's kind of personal, but just some really awesome things that we look back and we think, wow, we crossed paths so many times, and the odds were against us in so many ways. Clearly the Lord had his hand in this. And one last thing I want to share before I sum it all up. I never realized this till years after we had been married. I had received a blessing when I was 15 years old. And in that blessing, it did tell me that one day the Lord would provide a way for me to be sealed in the house of the Lord with an eternal companion. And I thought, well, of course, the Lord knows I want to get married in the temple, so of course, you know, it'll all work out. He'll provide a way, of course. So why wouldn't he? It wasn't until years later I realized, no, he provided a way. I mean, it was so intricate. All the details that had to be in place, the timing. There's no way that happened on its own. He provided a way, and his hand was in that every step of the way. And if it were not for him, we would not be married. So just an amazing story. And so, you know, we joke, we tell people, you know, my husband was arrested and was kicked out of the country, and, you know, it's kind of a funny story, but at the same time, it's actually a pretty spiritual and beautiful story. So now another thing I realized too in my journal from junior high, I would write about, and I remember dreaming about it all the time. I knew somehow that I would marry a man from Europe someday, but I thought he would be tall, dark, and handsome. And my husband's dark and handsome, but he's not tall. So I got 2 out of 3 on that one. But I just always knew I would marry someone from Europe. So that was really funny. And my husband's no longer a vegetarian. He's no longer a Lutheran. We still are a little bit different politically, but it keeps our marriage interesting and fun. And just, you know, the funniest part about all of this is I was reading this book I told you about. And at the very end, on the very last page, it says, so I tell the whole story, and there's a lot more detail in there that I didn't share with you. It just makes it so much more dramatic. There were people who didn't want us to get married and tried to break it up, and anyways, I'm not going to share those details, but it's a crazy story. But at the end of this version of my version, I have a little part down here you can see, and it says Manuel's version. Now I love this. It says Manuel's version. I walked into her work. She turned me down. Being her second choice, she called me up to replace the date that canceled on her. I proposed, got stuck in Germany, and 1 year later we were married. The end. So, yeah, if people ever ask him the story, they get that really short detail of 2 sentences. And then there's my version, and I share everything. So, anyways, it's a lot of fun, and I share that with you because I think it applies in so many areas of our lives. If we look at where we are today and how we got here, it's really hard not to look at how the Lord has a hand in your life. And everything that happens in your life, whether good or bad, it doesn't happen by chance. Everything happens for a reason. And everything happens overall for your benefit. So everything can be turned into something good for you. Whether you realize it now or it takes years later for you to look back and realize how this beautiful puzzle of your life came together and all these beautiful events were orchestrated to create something amazing. So whether you reach amazing 10 years from now or you reach it tomorrow, just know that the Lord cares about you. You're important and you're beautiful and amazing. And you've got a really important purpose in this world. You're not just here to live and breathe and work and pay bills, but you're here to make a difference, and you're here to brighten up this world in a way that only you can do. And so start looking for his hand in your life and start writing about it. Maybe write it in your journal, share it with other people, because the more you think about it and talk about it, the more things start to things spark in your mind, and you realize, wow, I never thought about that, or I never put 2 and 2 together and realized that that was a miracle, or that was the Lord. And so just wanted to share that with you. For those of you who are married, I'd love to give you some awesome marriage advice, but I think I'll save that for another video, for another day. So hope you have an awesome weekend, and we will talk to you next week. See you later. Was at my previous job. So just weeks before we met, I was working at Chili's as a hostess in Riverdale, and she was a bus girl, and she had trained me on my first day, and I guess he would come pick her up. So he was there at that restaurant picking her up from work every day, and I never saw him. So anyways, there's so much more to the story that I've left out, and a lot of it's kind of personal, but just some really awesome things that we look back and we think, wow, we crossed paths so many times and the odds were against us in so many ways. Clearly the Lord had his hand in this. And one last thing I want to share before I sum it all up. I never realized this till years after we had been married. I had received a blessing when I was 15 years old, and in that blessing it did tell me that one day the Lord would provide a way for me to be sealed in the house of the Lord with an eternal companion. And I thought, well, of course, the Lord knows I want to get married in the temple, so of course, it'll all work out. He'll provide a way, of course. So why wouldn't he? It wasn't until years later I realized, no, he provided a way. I mean, it was so intricate. All the details that had to be in place, the timing. There's no way that happened on its own. He provided a way, and his hand was in that every step of the way. And if it were not for him, we would not be married. So just an amazing story. And so, we joke, we tell people, my husband was arrested and was kicked out of the country, and, it's kind of a funny story, but at the same time, it's actually a pretty spiritual and beautiful story. So now, another thing I realized too in my journal from junior high, I would write about, and I remember dreaming about it all the time. I knew somehow that I would marry a man from Europe someday, but I thought he would be tall, dark, and handsome. And my husband's dark and handsome, but he's not tall. So I got 2 out of 3 on that one. But I just always knew I would marry someone from Europe, so that was really funny. And my husband's no longer a vegetarian. He's no longer a Lutheran. We still are a little bit different politically, but it keeps our marriage interesting and fun. And just, the funniest part about all of this is I was reading this book I told you about. And at the very end, on the very last page, it says, so I tell the whole story, and there's a lot more detail in there that I didn't share with you. It just makes it so much more dramatic. There were people who didn't want us to get married and tried to break it up, and anyways, I'm not going to share those details, but it's a crazy story. But at the end of this version, of my version, I have a little part down here you can see, and it says Manuel's version. No, I love this. It says Manuel's version. I walked into her work. She turned me down. Being her second choice, she called me up to replace the date that canceled on her. I proposed, got stuck in Germany, and 1 year later we were married. The end. So, yeah, if people ever ask him the story, they get that really short detail of 2 sentences, and then there's my version, and I share everything. So anyways, it's a lot of fun, and I share that with you because I think it applies in so many areas of our lives. If we look at where we are today and how we got here, it's really hard not to look at how the Lord has a hand in your life. And everything that happens in your life, whether good or bad, it doesn't happen by chance. Everything happens for a reason, and everything happens overall for your benefit. So everything can be turned into something good for you. Whether you realize it now, or it takes years later for you to look back and realize how this beautiful puzzle of your life came together, and all these beautiful events were orchestrated to create something amazing. So whether you reach amazing 10 years from now, or you reach it tomorrow, just know that the Lord cares about you. You're important, and you're beautiful and amazing, and you've got a really important purpose in this world. You're not just here to live and breathe and work and pay bills, but you're here to make a difference, and you're here to brighten up this world in a way that only you can do. And so start looking for his hand in your life and start writing about it. Maybe write it in your journal, share it with other people, because the more you think about it and talk about it, the more things start to, things spark in your mind, and you realize, wow, I never thought about that, or I never put 2 and 2 together and realized that that was a miracle, or that was the Lord. And so just wanted to share that with you. For those of you who are married, I'd love to give you some awesome marriage advice, but I think I'll save that for another video, for another day. So hope you have an awesome weekend, and we will talk to you next week. See you later.